Welcome to Make Sylacauga Healthy Again. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan Douglas of Broadway Spinal Care. Today we've got a timely and pretty serious discussion to have, and this is football season, the beginning of at least in Alabama, and that is a time that is important to people in Alabama, I can tell you that. So there's a topic we are going to discuss that people are not necessarily going to love about football, but people need to understand it, and we're hoping that we can save a few lives on this. Not necessarily literally saving lives, but save the quality of their life. The theme of today is summed up in this graphic. The greatest of follies is to sacrifice health for any other kind of happiness. That's what we're going to talk about today because that happens a lot during the football season. Stay tuned. So Tara and I practiced in Washington State for over 20 years, and then we've been in Alabama for about 3 now. And so what people see of us here is very, very different than what we did in Washington. And I was just talking to our producer this morning. He didn't even realize this, but chiropractic has a huge scope to it. And you might be thinking, why is a chiropractor talking about football? Well, one of the things we're going into today is concussion. We're going to talk about brain injuries. And our practice in Washington, we saw a lot of brain injuries. We worked with a neurosurgeon, we worked with a neuro-ophthalmologist, and so we've done a lot of work with brain injuries. Some days we spend the majority of the day talking to people and working with people, helping them through concussions, brain injuries. So, football season started. I got a little graphic for you here. This blows your mind, literally. 378 head impacts per season in a youth tackle football program. So that's the typical person, the typical player, 378 head impacts. They put a sensor in a helmet, and that's how they figure this out. Flag football, almost none, of course. That's why it's a lot safer. There are other injuries with flag football, though, too. 715,000 high school athletes are injured each year. That's not only head injuries, that's just a little bit of everything. 35% of college football players with concussions sustain another one in the same season. That is very, very, very dangerous. And then this is the time of year when we have those heat-related illnesses. And boy, a concussion with a heat-related illness is a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. So, got one more graphic for you we're going to put up here, and then we are going to discuss what needs to happen. Sports are not worth a lifetime of health issues. So, this is what I can tell you. There's almost nothing worse than somebody coming into a new place and saying, you're doing something wrong. But I can tell you that in Alabama, there is a huge emphasis to get players back on the field. There's an emphasis everywhere. But I was a trainer for a football team in Washington, a high school team, and I fought the fight there too. But 21 days is the standard for a minimum if you have a concussion. So any kind of concussion, and concussion is very easy to diagnose. There are now apps that you can get on your phone that will actually do this. There are apps they have in office. There's some very simple tests that tell you this person had their bell rung. So I guess we could talk about that too. Somebody said, oh, he didn't have a concussion, he just hit his head and had his bell rung. That is the same thing. If you hit your head or if your head hits the ground and your brain bounces around and you have any concussion symptoms, then the standard is 21 days, no contact. Generally, you take them out of major activities. You want to get them back into light activities pretty soon. That whole rest period is generally not anything that we recommend anymore. You want to get them back into rehab. You want to start doing some balance exercises, some hand-eye coordination exercises as soon as they can handle it. But 21 days is what has to happen. But here's the scenario. So a star player gets hit in the head, and then they need to be, let's say start of the season, they need to be in there. 3 weeks is a long time to come out. We got 3 games potentially that this person's not going to be in there playing. And you think, wow, that could be devastating to this high school season. Who cares? I know that everybody wants football to be great and you want this season to be amazing, but I can tell you that we know people who live in dark rooms because they were put back into games and they got hit in the head again. I'm going to say that one more time. We know people who literally live in dark rooms. Some of them wake up in the morning and they don't even know who they are. So I want you to hear that. They don't even know who they are, and it was because they did not heal, were not allowed to come out of something when they should have with a head injury. So when you think, oh, this guy got his bell rung, why are they not putting him back in? What is he doing? He's kind of playing this up. That is not the case. If somebody has a concussion, then they could have another one, and they could literally do nothing the rest of their life but live in a dark room. That is a serious situation. And when you meet these people, you never want this to happen to anybody else. And unless you work with them, we especially work with this neuro-ophthalmologist in Birmingham, the Snyders. They're going to be on our show pretty soon. They see these people too, and we're in such agreement that it just does not make any sense at all to not be really, really, really careful if somebody hits their head. So I'm making a plea to parents out there and to coaches that these kids are not playing this up. If they have a head injury, they do not need to be in there. If they're still having any symptoms at all after those 21 days, continue to reevaluate, and that 21 rolls again. That game is not important enough for us to have that discussion at all. The other thing is going to be heat-related illnesses. And so with heat-related things, you can develop all kinds of really bad problems. The worst of them would be that your body really develops an autoimmune situation where you have not necessarily a heat stroke, but your body goes into such a deficit of electrolytes and fluids that it starts to break down your muscles. And that happens a lot when you're pushed too hard in practices, pushed too hard early, and then also when you've been pushed too hard, you hit a limit like a heat stroke, and then you're brought back in again. So we go back to that 21 days. If we can take 3 weeks off, generally you can get somebody to where they're doing enough better to where they can start to slowly integrate themselves back into that situation. Please, 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 if you have a child that's a player of any kind and they come home and they have symptoms, then you've got to find somebody who knows what they're doing with brain injuries, and you've got to be real, real serious about it. It is not a game when you get hit in the head, and it is not fun at all to see these children who basically have no life ahead of them, no quality of life, just because they tried to get back into that game too soon. Think about it very, very seriously. Let's enjoy the game, but let's also protect those players. We'll see you next time.